Hey guys, it's me, Chandler. Welcome back to another video on the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a December plus January reading wrap-up. So I'm going to be talking to you guys about all the books I read in December and in January. Let's see how many books I read. In December, I read 4 books. And in January, I read 7 books. So there's going to be a total of 11 books in this wrap-up. But let's just get right into it. The first book I read in December was One Day in December by Josie Silver. And I was expecting this to be like a really Christmassy romance, but I feel like it's marketed like that and I really feel like it wasn't. I don't even remember the characters' names, but it's very insta-lovey. So these 2 characters see each other one day on like a bus, like one of them's getting on a bus and one of them sees the other, and then they like think about them for the next 2 years. And then the main girl, her best friend, introduces her boyfriend, and it's the guy from the bus that she's been thinking about ever since. And it's not even very Christmassy. Like, some of the book does happen in December, but it takes place over like many years. So I definitely wouldn't go into it thinking it's like a Christmassy book necessarily. Like, you can read this any time of year. It's not like just a December book. And I don't know, for me the book just kind of fell flat. Like, I feel like one insta love I cannot stand. It was just really annoying. And to me the book was just kind of boring. Like, it was like 300 pages of like nothing. I mean, stuff happened, but you know what I mean. Like, to me, it was just kind of boring, but also at the same time, there were a lot of parts that I did enjoy. So I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars. So it's not necessarily like a good book, but it's not necessarily a bad book. Like, it's kind of just mid. Okay, and then the next book I read was A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas, and I gave this book 5 stars. I absolutely loved this book. This is actually, well, okay, I don't know what my favorite book in the series is, to be honest. Like, it's probably this book, but also I don't know. There's this book, and I gave this 5 stars. There were many times I almost cried, and it was just so good. You can tell by the amount of tabs there are. This series is just absolutely incredible, and the found family in this series is like no other. Like, it is so incredible. I just really enjoyed this story, and this is the final book in the original trilogy. So if you didn't know, the ACOTAR series was supposed to just be a trilogy originally, but then Sarah J. Maas extended it for more books. So this was like the end of the original trilogy, and you can definitely stop reading here and like you get closure and everything. So that is what happened with this book. And then I took a little break from the series and finished off a different series. I read Finale by Stephanie Garber, which is the 3rd book in the Caraval trilogy, and I gave this book 3.5 stars. And so I did enjoy it, but it was kind of just, I don't know what happened. I don't know why I didn't enjoy this book as much. For me, I know a lot of people say that the trilogy, the Caraval trilogy, gets better with each book. For me, I felt like it got worse. Like, I rated the first book 4.5 stars, the second book 4 stars, and the 3rd book 3.5 stars. So it overall, I would say, is a pretty good series. Like, I'd say it's overall like a 4-star, 3.75 star type of series. I just felt like too much was going on, and I really, okay, unpopular opinion, but I feel like this didn't need to be a trilogy. Like, I feel like the first book was such a good story. I don't know, I feel like the first book, we could have ended there and maybe like closed it off a little better, and then we would have been fine. I don't know, that's just my opinion. Definitely, if you want to read the series, go for it. I do want to read the spin-off series though, Once Upon a Broken Heart, because I've heard that's really good. So I do want to definitely try that one out and kind of give this world another chance. And then the last book that I read in December was A Court of Frost and Starlight, which is another book in the ACOTAR series, and this is just like a teeny weeny little novella, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 stars. I didn't give it 5 stars because, like, I don't know, I feel like I couldn't, like, I didn't necessarily get that 5-star feeling with this book. What I wrote on my review is, I will eat up anything with these characters. I don't care what anyone says. I think this novella was great just because of the extra scenes we get with these characters. So excited for A Court of Silver Flames. So again, this book, I would say, if you're trying to debate whether you need to read it or not, no, you don't need to. There is a character introduced in this book, however, that is a big part of the next book, but I mean, you would be fine without reading it, I think, anyways. So this is kind of just, I feel like if you want some more extra scenes with the characters, if you really just love this world and these characters, and then I would definitely recommend reading it. But I don't necessarily think at all that it is necessary to read, but I just really enjoyed reading it. This is like a little Christmassy novella type of thing. It happens during the winter solstice, which is kind of their version of Christmas, so it definitely had Christmassy vibes. And this was the last book I read in 2022, and I think it was a good end to the year. Then the first book that I read in 2023 was The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, and I've been wanting to read this forever. I realized so far this has all been fantasy. I'm kind of in my fantasy era, to be honest. But The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, I gave this 4 stars. This follows Jude, who is not a fairy, but she is kind of, because of some circumstances, she kind of has to live in the fairy land amongst all the fairies, and she doesn't necessarily fit in, and I don't know how else to explain it, but there's like little adventures that go on. There's like a little bit of enemies to lovers. I feel like this series is marketed as an enemies to lovers romance, and I wouldn't say that. I would say, like, okay, compared to ACOTAR, I feel like this is more of a fantasy romance, whereas The Cruel Prince is fantasy that has a subplot of romance. Like, it's not the leading driving force in the book at all by any means. So definitely don't go into this book just wanting that, because then you definitely will be disappointed with it. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book actually, and I gave it 4 stars. And then I read The Lost Sisters, which is like a little novella in between the first and second book in the series. I give it 3 stars. It follows Jude's sister Taryn and kind of like letters she's written to Jude, if I remember correctly. And it was fine. It was definitely very, very, very unnecessary. It was like 50 pages though, so it wasn't like incredibly boring or anything. Like, I read it within an hour. So read it if you want, but it's definitely not necessary at all. We basically get no extra information. So I rated this 3 stars because to me it was just kind of like, it wasn't good by any means, but I wouldn't say it was like a bad book. It was kind of just a book where it was like, yeah, quick, easy read. I had a good time. And then I read In 5 Years by Rebecca Surley. And this is a little romance book. It's very short. I think it's, yeah, it's under 300 pages. And it follows this girl who one day wakes up 5 years in the future, and she is not with the guy that she is with right now. And right now she's like engaged to this guy, but in 5 years she's like married to this whole other person and everything. She kind of has to figure out why in 5 years she's not with him, and if that's really true and everything. And it definitely has like some plot twists and stuff that happen. It's a romance. I was gonna rate this like 3.75 stars, but there's something that happens at the end of the book that I can just not get over, and it's definitely a spoiler, so I'm not gonna like say it. There's just something that happens at the end that I am just like, it's questionable. So I ended up rating this book 3 stars. I feel like I've rated a lot of books 3 stars in this, but you know, I have to live my truth. So this book was a 3 star for me. Then I listened to the audiobook of His and Hers by Alice Feeney, and this is a thriller, and it's from the perspective of a guy who is like a cop and then a girl, so it's kind of in between their perspectives, and there is a murder case that happened, and all the clues are kind of pointing towards the girl, and the cop is kind of trying to figure it out, and the girl's also trying to like kind of figure out what happened. And the plot twist at the end was insane. I thought I had it figured out the whole time, but I did not. And I feel like it wasn't one of those plot twists that's like way out there, like would never happen. Like, it was a good plot twist. It was solid, and I ended up giving this book 4 stars because I really, really enjoyed it, but it wasn't necessarily like a 5-star read or anything. Then I read The Wicked King by Holly Black, which is the second book in the Cruel Prince trilogy, and I gave this book 4.5 stars. I really, really enjoyed it, and I'm really excited to read the last book of the series. And I can't necessarily explain what this book is about because it's the second book in a series, so it's kind of hard to do so. But I will say this book is better than the first one, and I've heard that the last book is even better. This one definitely did have more romance, and I think this is a really good YA fantasy series. Then I read A Man Called Uwe by Frederick Bachman, and it actually is A Man Called Uwe. I thought it was A Man Called Ove, but I partially listened to the audiobook of this, and the narrator says Uwe, so that's what we're gonna call it. This is a literary fiction book. It follows a grumpy man named Uwe, and kind of just going through his life and how he came to be this way, and he just has so much character development. But then one day he has new neighbors, and he meets them by them running over his mailbox, so he's not very happy about that. But his relationship that he builds with them and their daughters is just so sweet, and I really enjoyed this book. This book is sad, definitely. It goes into like Uwa's past and everything, and I definitely want to read another Frederick Bachman book. I have so many of his books on my TBR, so I'm really excited to get to them. And this book was a 4.5 star for me. I really enjoyed it. So those are the books I read in December and January. I do hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below. I love you guys so much, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye!